On the night of October 14th, beneath the chandeliers of Manhattan's most exclusive gala, Dante Morelli stood untouchable, a 42-year-old king of shadows who bent the city to his will. Politicians whispered in his ear. Billionaires feared his gaze. Power itself seemed to orbit around him. At his side, his wife, Serafina, elegant, silent, perfect. At 11:02 p.m., she leaned close, pressed her lips near his ear, and whispered something soft. Then she vanished into the crowd. She never came back. By sunrise, Dante had lost more than his wife. He'd lost his money, his network, his empire. This wasn't a disappearance, it was the execution of his entire life. And the woman who destroyed him? She'd been sleeping beside him for years. If you want to see how far revenge can reach and how deep a lie can go, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne tasted like metal. Dante Morelli stood at the edge of the grand ballroom with a crystal flute in his hand, watching the glittering mass of wealth and corruption swirl around him like flies over rotting fruit. Senators laughed too loud. Hedge fund managers checked their phones between handshakes. Women in dresses worth more than most people's cars pretended not to notice the blood money funding it all. He didn't smile. He never smiled at these things. Mr. Morelli, a councilman whose name Dante couldn't bother remembering, appeared at his elbow, sweating through his tuxedo. I wanted to thank you again for your contribution to the community center project. Dante turned his head slowly. The man flinched. You're welcome, Dante said. His voice was flat, controlled, the kind of tone that made people remember they were standing too close. The councilman stammered something about budgets and timelines, then scurried away. Beside Dante, Serafina sipped her wine without expression. She'd perfected that look over the years. Present but distant, beautiful but untouchable. The perfect accessory for a man who needed the world to see stability, elegance, control. You could pretend to enjoy yourself, she murmured, her lips barely moving. I could, Dante said, but I won't. She tilted her head slightly, the diamond earrings he'd given her catching the light. You're in a mood. I'm always in a mood. True. She set her glass on a passing waiter's tray with practiced grace. But tonight you're worse than usual. He didn't answer. His eyes tracked the room instead. Exits, faces, threats, old habits. The kind that kept you alive when you built your fortune on other people's fear. Across the ballroom, Victor Cade stood with his arms crossed, scanning the crowd with the same cold efficiency. Victor had been with Dante for 15 years, his right hand, his enforcer, his only real friend if such a word meant anything in their world. Tonight Victor looked tense, more than usual. Dante's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen. A text from an unlisted number. The product is in transit. Delivery confirmed for 300. He deleted it immediately. Business? Serafina asked, her tone light, disinterested. Always. She turned to face him fully, and for just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Something he couldn't read. Dance with me, she said. It wasn't a question. Dante hesitated. He hated dancing, hated the performance of it, the forced intimacy. But refusing would draw attention, and tonight he needed to blend in, to be the respectable philanthropist writing checks for cancer research, while his real empire moved weapons and influence through the city's veins. He set down his glass and took her hand. The orchestra swelled as they moved onto the floor. Serafina fit against him perfectly, practiced, mechanical, cold. They'd done this 100 times, 1,000. You're distracted, she said softly, her breath warm against his neck. I'm always distracted. No. Her fingers tightened slightly on his shoulder. Tonight is different. He looked down at her. She was beautiful in that untouchable way. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back, skin like porcelain. He'd married her 6 years ago for exactly that reason. A statement. A symbol of the legitimacy he was building over the criminal empire he actually controlled. She'd never asked questions, never demanded more than he was willing to give. The perfect wife for a man with too many secrets. I have a lot on my mind, he said. The shipment? His hand stiffened on her waist. What shipment? She smiled, and it looked almost real. The one you've been checking your phone about all night. Don't worry, Dante. I don't actually care what you're doing. I stopped caring a long time ago. The song ended. She pulled away smoothly, her expression already resetting to neutral. I need some air, she said. I'll be back in a moment. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the terrace doors, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Dante watched her go, uneasy crawling up his spine like insects. Victor appeared at his side. Everything good? Fine, Dante said, but he kept his eyes on the terrace doors. The delivery's on schedule, Victor continued, his voice low. Chen confirmed the route. No complications. Good. You seem off. Dante finally looked at him. Victor's face was all hard angles and scar tissue, the result of 20 years in a business that didn't forgive mistakes. But his eyes were sharp, alert. Serafina's acting strange, Dante said. Victor's eyebrows lifted slightly. Strange how? I don't know. Different. Women are always different. Victor shrugged. That's why I don't keep them around long enough to notice. Dante didn't smile. The unease was growing, spreading through his chest like poison. Stay here, he said. I'm going to check on her. He crossed the ballroom quickly, ignoring the greetings and outstretched hands. The terrace was less crowded, a few couples lingering in the cool October air, smoking cigarettes and pretending their marriages weren't falling apart. No Serafina. Dante moved to the railing, scanning the garden below. Nothing. Just shadows and sculpted hedges. His phone buzzed again. Another text. Same unlisted number. She's gone. His blood turned to ice. He spun, eyes cutting across the terrace, the garden, the parking area beyond. His thumb was already moving, dialing Victor. Get the car, he said, the second Victor picked up. Now. What's wrong? Serafina's missing. Missing? Dante, she probably just went to the bathroom. She's gone, Victor. Move. He hung up and started toward the exit, his mind racing. This wasn't paranoia. This was instinct. The same instinct that had kept him alive through wars and betrayals and power plays that would have buried weaker men. Something was wrong. He reached the parking area just as Victor pulled up in the black sedan. Dante climbed in, already pulling up security feeds on his phone, the Gala, the surrounding streets, traffic cameras. Nothing. Where are we going? Victor asked. Home. Now. Victor didn't argue. He floored it. The drive back to Dante's penthouse took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of silence, broken only by the hum of the engine and the pulse hammering in Dante's skull. When they arrived, the building's doorman looked confused. Mr. Morelli, I wasn't expecting... Has my wife come through here tonight? Mrs. Morelli? No, sir. Not since this morning. Dante pushed past him and took the private elevator to the top floor. Victor followed, his hand resting on the gun under his jacket. The penthouse was dark, silent. Dante moved through it methodically, living room, kitchen, study, everything in its place, nothing disturbed. But when he reached the bedroom, he stopped cold. The closet was half empty, not ransacked, not messy, just reduced. Her clothes were gone, her shoes, the small leather bag she always carried. Dante. Victor's voice was tight. Dante turned. Victor stood in the doorway of the study, his face pale. You need to see this. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides. The study looked untouched at first glance. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with first edition books he'd never read. But Victor was pointing at the desk. The laptop was open, the screen glowing. On it, a single folder, labeled Checkmate. Dante's hands were shaking as he opened it. Inside, thousands of files, documents, audio recordings, video footage, financial records, his financial records, offshore accounts, shell companies, money transfers, every dirty dollar he'd moved in the last decade, cataloged and time-stamped. But it was the video file that made his heart stop. He clicked it. Serafina's face filled the screen. But she wasn't in their penthouse. She was somewhere else. Plain walls, dim lighting. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup. She looked different, harder, real. When she spoke, her voice was calm, steady. Hello, Dante. He couldn't breathe. By the time you see this, I'll be gone. The money's gone. The accounts are empty. Everything you built, everything you thought you controlled, it's all been redirected, redistributed. I've spent the last 6 years learning every password, every code, every biometric signature you use. Your voice, your retinal scans, your fingerprints. She leaned closer to the camera, and her eyes were cold. Dead. My real name is Alina Vance. You probably don't remember that name. Why would you? You've destroyed so many lives. What's one more? Dante's vision blurred at the edges. My brother was Marcus Vance. He worked for you 3 years ago. Brilliant hacker, forced into your network to keep me safe. You promised him protection. You promised him a way out. But when he found a flaw in the weapons systems you were selling, when he tried to warn people that your product was defective and would get soldiers killed, you had him eliminated. Her voice didn't waver. You buried him in an unmarked grave. You erased every trace of his existence. And you thought that was the end of it. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Dante had ever seen. It wasn't. The screen went black. Dante stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. Victor grabbed his shoulder. Dante, we need to... His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Morelli? The voice was clipped, professional. Federal. This is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the Financial Crimes Division. We're currently executing warrants on 17 of your properties and freezing all associated accounts. I'm going to need you to remain where you are. The line went dead. Victor was already moving toward the window. We need to leave, now. But Dante couldn't move. He stared at the laptop screen, at the thousands of files that represented his entire empire laid bare. She took everything, he whispered. We'll get it back, Victor said. We'll find her. You don't understand. Dante's voice was hollow. She didn't just take the money, she became me. Every authorization, every transfer, it was all done using my own credentials, my voice, my eyes, my goddamn fingerprints. The magnitude of it crashed over him like a wave. She'd been watching, learning, recording. For 6 years. Every private conversation, every business deal, every moment he'd thought he was safe in his own home. How? Victor breathed. Dante's phone buzzed with an incoming email. Subject line, distribution complete. He opened it. A single line of text. Your money has been donated to 127 charitable organizations across 34 countries. Every dollar, every account. Consider it your brother's legacy. Below it, an attachment, a photograph. The Morelli's son, a 40-carat diamond necklace he'd given Serafina on their wedding anniversary. His most valuable gift to her. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the diamond contained encrypted access codes to his emergency network, weapons dealers, black market defense systems, the final insurance policy that could rebuild everything if his empire ever fell. In the photograph, she was wearing it and smiling. The penthouse shook as federal agents breached the front door. Victor raised his gun. Back exit, we can still let... It's over, Dante said quietly. No, we fight. We run. Victor. Dante met his eyes. It's over. Footsteps thundered down the hallway, voices shouting commands. Dante raised his hand slowly as armed agents poured into the room. They slammed him to the floor, zip-tied his wrists, read him his rights. The words washed over him like white noise. All he could see was Serafina's face on that screen. Alina's face, cold, focused, victorious. As they dragged him toward the elevator, Victor struggled against his own restraints, shouting something Dante couldn't hear over the chaos. But Dante wasn't listening. His mind was already somewhere else, chasing a ghost through the dark. The woman who'd slept beside him for 6 years. The woman who'd learned every secret he possessed. The woman who'd waited patiently, methodically, for the perfect moment to burn his entire world to ash. And she'd done it with a smile. The elevator doors closed, cutting off the noise of the raid. In the sudden silence, Dante finally understood. He hadn't lost his wife. He'd never had one. What he'd had was a weapon, and it had just fired. The interrogation room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Dante sat with his wrists cuffed to a metal table, staring at the two-way mirror across from him. He'd been here 4 hours. No water, no lawyer, just fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the weight of silence pressing down on his chest. The door opened. Special Agent Sarah Chen walked in carrying a thick folder. She was mid-30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of federal agent who'd built her career on taking down men exactly like him. She sat down across from him without a word, spread the folder open, and started laying out photographs. His penthouse, his offshore accounts, his business partners shaking hands in dimly lit restaurants. 17 years, she said finally. That's how long we've been trying to build a case against you, Mr. Morelli. 17 years of dead ends and witnesses who suddenly changed their minds. Evidence that disappeared. Judges who retired early. Dante said nothing. And then tonight, everything we ever needed just appeared. Every transaction, every communication, every shell company and numbered account. She leaned forward, almost like someone gift-wrapped it for us. I want my lawyer, Dante said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Your lawyer's tied up in his own federal investigation right now. Something about money laundering and obstruction of justice. Funny how that worked out. Chen smiled without warmth. But sure, we can wait. You've got plenty of time. 3 life sentences worth by my count. She stood up, gathering the photographs. Oh, one more thing. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. Your wife, I mean Alina Vance, she left you a message. Well, not a message exactly, more like a forwarding address. She slid the paper across the table. It was a bank statement, his emergency account in the Cayman Islands, the one only 3 people in the world knew existed. Balance, $0. Last withdrawal, 11:47 p.m., October 14th. Authorized by Dante Morelli, biometric verification confirmed. His stomach dropped. That's impossible, he whispered. Is it? Chen collected the paper. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you authorized every single transfer yourself. Your voice, your fingerprints, your retinal scan. The technology doesn't lie, Mr. Morelli. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Welcome to the rest of your life. The door closed with a final click. Dante sat alone in the silence, his mind racing through the impossibility of what she'd done. Serafina, Alina, had spent 6 years building a perfect digital replica of him. Every biometric marker, every security measure he'd put in place to protect himself had become the weapon she used to destroy him. The door opened again. But this time it wasn't Chen. Victor stumbled in, his face bruised, blood crusted at the corner of his mouth. 2 federal marshals shoved him into the chair opposite Dante, then left them alone. 10 minutes, one of them said. Make it count. The door locked behind them. Victor stared at Dante with something between betrayal and desperation. His hands were cuffed too, knuckles scraped raw. They're saying I authorized shipments, Victor said, his voice shaking. Weapons deals. Human trafficking routes. Things I never touched, Dante. Things I didn't even know about. Dante's jaw tightened. She had access to everything. How? How the hell did she? Because I was stupid. The words tasted like acid. Because I thought I was safe in my own goddamn house. Because I married a ghost and never bothered to look deeper. Victor slumped forward, the fight draining out of him. They showed me recordings. Video of me at meetings I never attended. Phone calls I never made. It's all fabricated, right? Tell me it's fabricated. Dante wanted to say yes, wanted to give his oldest friend some kind of hope, but he couldn't. Some of it's real, he said quietly. The deals you actually made, the shipments you actually authorized. She just added to it, layered in things we didn't do to make the real crimes look worse. Jesus Christ. Victor's head dropped to the table. We're finished. Not yet. Victor looked up, and for a second Dante saw the man he used to be. The enforcer who'd walked through fire for him. The brother who'd never asked questions. What are you talking about? Victor said. They have everything, every file, every transaction, every body. They have what she gave them, Dante corrected. But she didn't give them everything. How do you know? Because she's playing a longer game. Dante leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. She took the Morelli's son, the necklace. Victor blinked. So what? It's a piece of jewelry. It's not just jewelry. The diamond has embedded access codes, emergency protocols, contacts who owe me favors across 6 continents. It's the reset button for everything. Understanding dawned slowly across Victor's battered face. She doesn't know what it is. She knows it's valuable, but she doesn't know how valuable. She thinks she took everything, but that necklace is the key to rebuilding. Then we find her, Victor said. We get it back. We're in federal custody, Victor. We're not finding anyone. Then who? Dante was quiet for a long moment. The name sat heavy on his tongue, dangerous just to speak aloud. Reyes, he said finally. Victor's face went pale. No, Dante, you can't. That man is the only person on earth who can track someone who doesn't want to be found. Dante's voice was steel. He's done it before. He'll do it again. He doesn't work cheap. I still have assets they haven't found. Buried deep. Old school. Cash and favors. Dante met Victor's eyes. I can reach him. And if he finds her, what then? Dante smiled, and it was the coldest thing Victor had ever seen. Then she learns what happens when you try to destroy a king and leave him breathing. The door opened. The marshals returned. Time's up. They dragged Victor to his feet. He looked back at Dante one last time, questions and doubt written across his face. But Dante was already somewhere else, already planning. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Men. 3 days later, Dante stood in front of a judge for his bail hearing. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, federal prosecutors, spectators who'd read the headlines and wanted to see the fallen empire up close. His lawyer, a nervous replacement named Gerald Finch, who smelled like cheap cologne and desperation, shuffled papers at the defense table. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, Mr. Morelli represents an extreme flight risk. He has resources in multiple countries, a history of witness intimidation, and demonstrated ties to violent criminal organizations. The government requests remand without bail. Judge Patricia Howard looked down from the bench with the expression of someone who'd heard it all before and believed none of it. Mr. Finch? She said. Your response? Gerald stood up too fast, knocking over a water glass. Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman and philanthropist. These allegations are supported by 17,000 pages of evidence, the prosecutor cut in, including audio recordings of Mr. Morelli personally ordering the elimination of witnesses. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Dante sat perfectly still, his face a mask. Judge Howard banged her gavel. Order, Mr. Finch, does your client have anything to say? Gerald looked at Dante desperately. They'd practiced this. Keep quiet. Don't engage. Let the lawyers handle it. But Dante stood up anyway. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom, I won't insult your intelligence by claiming innocence, but I will say this. The evidence against me was compiled and delivered by someone with a personal vendetta, someone who manipulated digital systems to create a narrative that serves her purposes, not the truth. The evidence was authenticated by 3 independent forensic teams, the prosecutor shot back. Authenticated to prove the files are real, Dante continued, ignoring her. Not that their content is accurate. My wife, Alina Vance, spent 6 years with unlimited access to my life. She could fabricate anything, include real crimes alongside manufactured ones to blur the lines. Judge Howard's expression didn't change. Are you suggesting the FBI has been manipulated, Mr. Morelli? I'm suggesting that when you let a wolf into your house and call it a dog, you shouldn't be surprised when it bites. The judge studied him for a long moment. Bail is denied, she said finally. Remand to federal custody pending trial. Next case. The gavel fell. Marshals moved to take Dante back into custody, but he didn't resist. He'd expected this, planned for it. As they led him out through the side door, he caught a glimpse of someone in the back of the courtroom. A woman, mid-40s, plain clothes, unremarkable, but her eyes locked onto his for just a second, and he saw the message there. Message received. She was gone before he could process it fully, disappearing into the crowd. But it was enough. Reyes had gotten his call. Inmates. Metropolitan Correctional Center smelled like concrete and violence. Dante's cell was 6 by 8 feet, a metal bed bolted to the wall, a steel toilet, and a tiny window that showed nothing but gray sky. He'd been here 5 days. 5 days of processing, of watching other inmates size him up, of calculating threats and alliances. His reputation had preceded him. Even here, in federal holding, people knew who Dante Morelli was. Some kept their distance. Others stared with the kind of hunger that came from seeing a king brought low. On the sixth day, a guard escorted him to the visitors' area. "You got 10 minutes," the guard said, uncuffing him and shoving him toward the plexiglass partition. Dante sat down, expecting Victor, or maybe Gerald with more bad news. Instead, a man in an expensive suit sat on the other side of the glass. Late 60s, silver hair, cold smile. Dante's blood froze. Antonio Russo, the man who'd controlled the Eastern Seaboard's criminal networks for 30 years before Dante had systematically dismantled his empire and absorbed the profitable pieces. They hadn't spoken in a decade. Russo picked up the phone on his side. Dante did the same. "Hello, Dante." Russo's voice was smooth, pleasant, the voice of someone who'd already won. "You're looking well. Prison suits you." "What do you want, Antonio?" "Want?" Russo laughed softly. "I don't want anything. I'm just here to watch, to savor this moment. Do you know how long I've waited to see you behind that glass?" Dante said nothing. 10 years, Russo continued. 10 years of watching you take everything I built, my territory, my connections, my respect. You crushed me like I was nothing, and now look at you. If you came here to gloat, I came here to deliver a message." Russo leaned closer to the glass. "Your wife, or should I say, the woman pretending to be your wife, she's been very busy. The money she took from you, she didn't just donate it, she weaponized it." Dante's grip tightened on the phone. "She sent very generous contributions to every family you ever destroyed, every rival you crushed, every enemy you made, told them exactly where the money came from, told them you wanted to make amends." Russo's smile widened. "Of course, we all know that's a lie. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that every criminal organization from here to Hong Kong now thinks you're either weak or trying to manipulate them." "That's not... And weak men don't last long in our world, do they, Dante?" Russo stood up slowly. "I give you 6 months, maybe less. Someone in here is going to put a knife in your ribs, or someone out there is going to put a bullet in your head. And either way, I'll finally sleep well at night." He hung up the phone and walked away without looking back. Dante sat frozen, the full weight of Alina's plan finally crashing down on him. She hadn't just destroyed his empire, she'd turned him into a target. That night, lying on his bunk, Dante stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment of his marriage. The quiet breakfasts, the separate bedrooms, the polite distance they'd maintained like a demilitarized zone. He'd thought she was content, submissive, safe. How had he missed it? He ran through the timeline obsessively. 6 years. She must have started planning the moment she said, "I do." Every smile had been reconnaissance. Every kiss had been a calculation. His brother, Marcus Vance. The name rattled around in Dante's skull like a bullet. He tried to remember. 3 years ago. A hacker on his payroll. Young, brilliant, arrogant. There'd been a problem with a weapons system. Faulty guidance chips and missiles being sold to a foreign buyer. Marcus had discovered it, had tried to go public, had threatened to expose the whole network. Dante had given the order himself. Clean, quiet, permanent. He'd forgotten about it within a week. But Alina hadn't forgotten. She'd watched her brother die and then spent 6 years methodically dismantling the man responsible. The cell door rattled. Dante sat up, instantly alert. A guard he didn't recognize stood outside, keys in hand. "Visitor," the guard said. "It's past visiting hours. Special circumstances. Let's go." Something in the guard's tone made Dante's instincts scream, but he had no choice. He stood up, let himself be cuffed, and followed the guard through the empty corridor. They didn't go to the visitors' area. Instead, the guard led him down a service hallway, through 2 locked doors, and into a storage room filled with cleaning supplies and broken furniture. The guard closed the door behind them. Then he unlocked Dante's cuffs. "You have 5 minutes," the guard said. "Make it count." He stepped outside, leaving Dante alone in the storage room. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then a panel in the ceiling moved aside and a woman dropped down silently. She was small, wiry, with close-cropped black hair and eyes like a predator. She wore all black, no logos, no identification. "You're Morelli," she said. It wasn't a question. "Who are you?" "I work for Ray's. He got your message. She pulled out a small tablet, tapped the screen. He's accepted the contract, but he wants to make sure you understand the terms. I understand. Do you? She turned the tablet toward him. On screen, a list of assets, properties, accounts, favors owed. He wants all of it. Every buried dollar, every hidden safe house, every contact you've kept off the books. You give him that, he finds your wife and retrieves the necklace. And then? And then what you do with her is your business. He doesn't care. He's a tracker, not an executioner. Dante studied the list. It represented everything he had left, everything he could use to rebuild if he ever got out of prison. But none of it mattered if Alina kept breathing. Done, he said. The woman nodded, pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. This is a biometric scanner. I need your fingerprint, retinal scan, and voice authorization. Once I have those, Reyes can access the accounts. Dante hesitated for only a second. Then he pressed his thumb to the scanner, let her scan his eye, and spoke his authorization codes into the recorder. She checked the device, nodded with satisfaction. He'll start immediately. He'll send progress reports through the guard who brought you here. Don't try to contact him directly. Don't try to interfere. He works alone, and he works his own way. How long? As long as it takes. Could be days, could be months. Your wife is good at disappearing, but Reyes is better at finding. She moved toward the ceiling panel. One more thing. If you're lying about any of those assets, if anything is wrong or inaccessible, the deal's off, and you'll never hear from him again. Clear? Clear. She pulled herself back up into the ceiling without another word. 30 seconds later, the guard returned, cuffed Dante again, and led him back to his cell without speaking. Dante lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, his heart hammering. It was done. The hunter was loose. And somewhere out there, Alina had no idea what was coming for her. Quotes. 2 weeks crawled by. Dante settled into the prison routine, meals, yard time, watching for threats. He kept to himself mostly, but word had spread about who he was and what he'd done. The respect he'd commanded on the outside didn't translate inside. Here, he was just another inmate waiting for trial. On day 16, the guard who'd taken him to the storage room appeared at his cell during dinner. Medical, he said loudly, for the benefit of anyone listening. Let's go. Dante followed him to the same storage room. The woman from before was waiting, tablet in hand. He found her, she said without preamble. Dante's pulse spiked. Where? Lisbon. She's using the name Elena Rossi. New identity, new face, minor cosmetic surgery, enough to pass casual inspection. She's been there 3 days. And the necklace? She's wearing it. Public appearances at charity events, high society functions. Reyes says she's using your money to build a reputation as a humanitarian. The woman's expression was unreadable. She's good, almost perfect, but she made one mistake. What mistake? She kept the necklace. Sentimentality, maybe. Or insurance. Either way, it's traceable. The stone has a unique flaw pattern that shows up under certain UV frequencies. Reyes tracked it through auction records and insurance databases. Dante felt something cold settle in his chest. When does he move? He doesn't. Not yet. The woman tapped her tablet. She's surrounded by private security. Former Mossad, XSAS. Top-tier protection. Going in loud would get him killed and her spooked. He's watching, waiting for an opening. How long? As long as it takes. That's not good enough. The woman's eyes hardened. You hired the best tracker in the world. You don't get to second-guess his methods. He'll move when the moment is right, and when he does, he won't fail. But if you push him, if you try to rush this, he walks, and you're back to nothing. Dante forced himself to breathe, to think. She was right. He had no leverage here, no control. He'd spent his entire life being the man who made things happen, and now he was reduced to waiting in a cell while someone else hunted his ghost. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. Tell him to proceed, but I want updates. Every 48 hours. You'll get them when there's something to report. She disappeared back into the ceiling. The guard took Dante back to his cell. That night, lying in the dark, Dante tried to imagine what Alina was doing. Was she sleeping peacefully, thinking she'd won? Or was she looking over her shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop? He hoped she was scared. He hoped she knew, somewhere deep in her gut, that this wasn't over. 3 days later, everything fell apart. Dante was in the yard when it happened. 50 inmates scattered across the concrete, some lifting weights, others playing cards, everyone pretending not to watch everyone else. A man approached Dante casually, big, tattooed, prison muscles, and a face that had seen too many fights. "Morelli," the man said. His accent was thick, Eastern European, maybe Russian. Dante turned slowly. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you." The man smiled, showing gold teeth. "My cousin worked for Russo before you killed him." Dante's hand moved instinctively toward his pocket, but there was nothing there. No weapon. No protection. "That was business," Dante said carefully. "Nothing personal." "Everything is personal." The man stepped closer. "Russo sends his regards." He lunged. Dante barely got his arm up in time to block the first punch. It hit like a sledgehammer, numbing his forearm. He stumbled back, trying to create space, but other inmates were already moving, forming a circle, blocking the guard's line of sight. The second punch caught Dante in the ribs. Pain exploded through his chest. He swung back, connected with the man's jaw, but it barely fazed him. A knee drove into Dante's stomach. He doubled over, gasping. Then hands grabbed him from behind, 2 more men, holding him steady. The big man pulled out a shiv, crude, deadly, wrapped in electrical tape. "This is for Russo," he said. The blade flashed forward, but before it could connect, someone else moved, a blur of motion, a body slamming into the big man, taking him down hard. Victor. He'd appeared out of nowhere, his face twisted with rage, fists hammering down on Russo's enforcer with brutal efficiency. The 2 men holding Dante released him and moved toward Victor. The yard erupted into chaos. Alarms blared. Guards swarmed in with batons and tear gas. Bodies hit the concrete. Blood splattered across the pavement. Dante, gasping for breath, ribs screaming, watched as guards dragged Victor away. Their eyes met for just a second. Victor's face was covered in blood, but he was smiling. He'd just saved Dante's life, and he knew exactly what it would cost him. Basic. Solitary confinement was a 6x4 box with a concrete bed and a slot for food trays. Dante spent 72 hours there after the yard fight. No light, no sound, just the echo of his own breathing and the knowledge that Russo had put a price on his head. On the 4th day, the guard, his guard, the one working with Ray's, appeared at the slot. "Message," he said quietly. He slipped a piece of paper through the gap. Dante unfolded it in the darkness, holding it up to the thin beam of light from the door slot. Contact made. Necklace confirmed. Extraction in progress. His heart stopped. Ray's had her. But 2,000 miles away, in a sun-drenched plaza in Lisbon, the truth was far more complicated. Alina Vance, now Elena Rossi, sat at a cafe table wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream-colored dress. The Morelli sun hung around her neck, catching the light. She sipped her espresso slowly, watching the street. She'd felt the surveillance for 3 days now. Subtle, professional, someone very good. She'd expected this, planned for it. Dante wouldn't give up. Men like him never did. They'd claw their way back from hell itself if it meant getting revenge. So she'd left breadcrumbs. The necklace, the public appearances, the carefully maintained routine, all of it designed to draw out whoever he'd sent. And now, finally, the hunter had made his move. She saw him across the plaza, tall, lean, unremarkable. He was pretending to read a newspaper, but his eyes never left her. Alina stood up slowly, left exact change on the table, and started walking. She led him through narrow streets, past tourist traps and vendor stalls, moving with purpose but not panic. Finally, in a quiet alley behind a seafood restaurant, she stopped, turned around. The man appeared at the alley's entrance, blocking her exit. "The necklace," he said. His voice was calm, professional. "Give it to me, and you walk away." Alina reached up slowly, unclasped the Morelli sun, and held it out. The man stepped forward, gun in hand but not yet raised. "Who hired you?" Alina asked. "You know who?" "Dante." "The necklace." She extended it further, letting it dangle from her fingers. He reached for it. And in that moment, Alina made her choice. She threw the necklace hard, fast, over the edge of the nearby seawall. It arced through the air, caught the sunlight one last time, and plummeted into the Atlantic Ocean. The man reacted instantly, his head turning toward the water. 1 second of distraction. That's all she needed. Alina attacked, a knee to his groin, an elbow to his throat, a move she'd practiced 1,000 times. He stumbled back, gun clattering to the cobblestones. She ran. Behind her, she heard him cursing, scrambling for his weapon, but she was already gone, disappearing into the crowd, shedding her dress for the jeans and jacket she'd hidden beneath, pulling off the wig to reveal short-cropped hair underneath. Elena Rossi vanished, and someone new took her place. In his cell, Dante received the final message 3 hours later. Target escaped, asset lost, contract terminated. He read it 3 times, his hands shaking. She'd thrown it away. The necklace, his last chance, his emergency reset, his final insurance, was gone, sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and Alina was free. For the first time since this nightmare began, Dante felt something he'd never felt before. True, absolute helplessness. He'd played every card, burned every bridge, spent every resource, and he'd lost. The cell walls pressed in around him as the reality settled into his bones. His trial was in 2 months. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Victor was in solitary, facing his own charges. His empire was ashes. His money was gone. And the woman who destroyed him was still out there, breathing free air, living under the sun. Dante pressed his forehead against the cold concrete wall and laughed. It started quiet, then built, echoing through the empty corridor. Because he finally understood. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about power. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about making him feel exactly what Marcus Vance had felt in his final moments. Trapped, powerless, erased, and Alina had succeeded perfectly. The guards found him hours later, still laughing, tears streaming down his face. They thought he'd broken. They had no idea he'd just reached the point of no return. The trial started on a Tuesday. Federal courtroom, downtown Manhattan. Media circus outside. Cameras, reporters, protesters holding signs that read "Justice for the Victims" and "Lock him up." Dante watched them through the reinforced windows of the transport van, his wrists cuffed, his suit wrinkled from weeks in holding. Gerald Finch met him at the defense table, sweating through his shirt despite the air conditioning. "We need to talk strategy," Gerald whispered urgently. "The prosecution has—" "I know what they have," Dante said quietly. "Everything." "Right. Yes. So our best option is to negotiate a plea. If we can get it down to 20 years with possibility of parole, No plea." Gerald blinked. "Dante, if we go to trial with this evidence, you're looking at multiple life sentences. No parole. You'll die in prison." "Then I'll die in prison." Dante's voice was flat. "But I'm not giving them the satisfaction of a confession." "That's not rational. I don't pay you to tell me what's rational. I pay you to do what I say." Gerald opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. He shuffled his papers with shaking hands. The prosecution team sat across the aisle. 3 attorneys led by Sarah Chen, all perfectly pressed suits and confident smiles. They had this won before it started, and they knew it. The jury filed in. 12 faces, 12 strangers who would decide if Dante Morelli spent the rest of his life in a concrete box. Judge Howard entered. Everyone stood. "Please be seated," she said. "We'll begin with opening statements. Ms. Chen?" Sarah Chen stood smoothly, buttoned her jacket, and approached the jury box. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "over the next few weeks, you're going to hear about a man who built an empire on blood and fear. A man who ordered the deaths of 17 people that we know of. A man who trafficked weapons to terrorists, drugs to children, and lies to everyone who trusted him." She turned, pointed at Dante. "That man is Dante Morelli. And by the end of this trial, you will have no doubt, none whatsoever, that he is guilty of every single charge brought against him." She walked back to her table, sat down. Judge Howard nodded. "Mr. Finch, your opening statement?" Gerald stood up, dropped his notes, scrambled to pick them up. Half the jury was already writing him off. Yes. Thank you, Your Honor." He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, My client is not a perfect man, but perfection is not what's on trial here. What's on trial is the truth. And the truth is that much of the evidence against Mr. Morelli was compiled by a woman with a personal vendetta. A woman who had unlimited access to his life and unlimited motivation to destroy him. He was reading from his notes now, not making eye contact. We will show that while some of these allegations may have basis in fact, others have been fabricated, manipulated, or taken out of context to paint a picture that serves one person's revenge fantasy, not justice. He sat down quickly. Dante didn't look at him. His eyes were on the prosecution table, on Sarah Chen shuffling through her files with mechanical precision. She called her first witness, Agent Marcus Webb, FBI Financial Crimes Division. A man in his 50s took the stand, was sworn in, settled into his seat. Chen approached him with a tablet. Agent Webb, can you describe what you found when you analyzed Mr. Morelli's financial records? Yes. We identified over 400 suspicious transactions across 17 different offshore accounts. Money moving through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Classic money laundering patterns. And the total amount laundered? Approximately $3.2 billion over a 6-year period. The jury shifted. Someone gasped. Can you tell us who authorized these transactions? According to the biometric authentication logs, all transactions were authorized by Dante Morelli himself. Voice recognition, fingerprint verification, and retinal scanning all confirmed his identity. Chen nodded. So there's no possibility these transactions were made by someone else? The technology is extremely reliable. The probability of fraud is less than 1 in 10 million. Thank you, Agent Webb. Gerald stood for cross-examination, but he had nothing. The evidence was airtight. He asked a few weak questions about margin of error and authentication protocols, but Agent Webb batted them away easily. The rest of the day proceeded the same way. Witness after witness, each one adding another brick to the wall. By the time court adjourned, Dante could see it in the jury's faces. They'd already decided. Balkan. Back in his cell that night, Dante lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling. The guard appeared at the door. Not his guard. The one working with Reyes had disappeared after the Lisbon disaster. This was someone new, young, nervous. You got mail, the guard said, sliding an envelope through the slot. Dante sat up slowly. Mail was screened, monitored. Anything coming through official channels was safe to read but useless for real communication. He opened it. Inside, a single photograph. His breath caught. It was Alina, but not the Alina he'd known. This was someone else entirely. Short dark hair, different nose, sharper cheekbones. The cosmetic surgery had transformed her completely. She was sitting at an outdoor cafe, smiling at someone off camera. Happy, free. On the back of the photo, written in her handwriting, Marcus would have wanted me to forgive you, but I'm not as good a person as he was. Dante crumpled the photo in his fist, rage boiling through his veins. She was taunting him, rubbing his face in his own helplessness. He wanted to scream, to break something, to reach through the bars and tear the world apart. But he couldn't. All he could do was sit in his cell and take it. Day 3 of the trial brought the recordings. Sarah Chen stood in front of the jury with a laptop connected to the courtroom's audio system. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, what you're about to hear are excerpts from conversations that took place in Mr. Morelli's penthouse over a 3-year period. These were recorded by his wife, Alina Vance, as part of her documentation of his criminal activities. Gerald shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. These recordings were obtained without my client's consent. They're inadmissible. New York is a one-party consent state, Chen countered. Mrs. Morelli, Ms. Vance, was a party to these conversations. The recordings are perfectly legal. Judge Howard considered. Overruled. You may proceed, Ms. Chen. Chen pressed play. Dante's voice filled the courtroom. Clear. Unmistakable. I don't care what it takes. I want Chen eliminated before he testifies. Make it look like an accident. Another voice, Victor's, responded, already in motion. He's got a meeting tomorrow night. We'll make it quick. Good. And the family? What about them? Make sure they understand what happens when people cooperate with federal investigations. The recording stopped. The jury stared at Dante like he was something scraped off their shoes. Chen played another clip. then another, each one worse than the last, ordering hits, discussing weapons shipments, laughing about bribing judges and politicians. By the time she finished, Dante could feel the hatred radiating from the jury box. Gerald didn't even attempt cross-examination. What was the point? The recordings were his own voice, his own words. During the lunch recess, Gerald pulled Dante into a conference room. "We're done," Gerald said bluntly. "Those recordings destroyed us. The jury is going to convict on every single count. I know. So let me negotiate a plea, right now, before this gets worse." "It's not getting worse, Gerald. It's already as bad as it gets." "Then why are we still fighting?" Dante leaned back in his chair, studied the ceiling. "Because I need to know something." "Know what?" How far she was willing to go. Gerald stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You already know. She destroyed your entire life. What more do you need?" "Everything she did, the recordings, the financial evidence, the biometric fraud. It took years of planning, years of living with me, sleeping next to me, pretending." Dante's jaw tightened. "I need to know if she ever felt anything real, or if every single second was a lie." "Why does that matter?" "Because if there was even one moment of truth, one crack in her performance, then maybe I can find her again. Maybe I can—" "Dante." Gerald's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "It's over. She's gone. The necklace is gone. Your money is gone. You need to accept that and focus on damage control. Get out." "What?" "Get out of this room before I do something we'll both regret." Gerald gathered his files quickly and left. Dante sat alone in the silence, his mind churning. There had to be something, some angle he'd missed, some weakness in her plan. But every time he tried to think it through, he came back to the same conclusion. She'd been perfect, and that's what destroyed him most of all. Wasi. Day 5 brought the bombshell. Sarah Chen called a witness Dante didn't recognize. A woman in her early 30s, mousy brown hair, cheap suit. "Please state your name for the record," Chen said. "Rebecca Torres." "And what is your occupation, Ms. Torres?" "I'm a forensic accountant. I was hired by the FBI to analyze the financial transactions in this case." Chen nodded. "Can you tell the jury what you discovered?" Rebecca pulled out a thick binder. "I traced the movement of funds from Mr. Morelli's accounts after they were drained on October 14th. As previously stated, the money was distributed to 127 charitable organizations across 34 countries. And did you find anything unusual about these distributions?" "Yes." Rebecca flipped to a marked page. While most of the organizations were legitimate charities, 17 of them were shell companies designed to look like nonprofits, but actually funneling money back into private accounts. The courtroom went silent. Dante's head snapped up. "Can you elaborate?" Chen asked. "Someone created fake charities that accepted the donations, then immediately transferred the funds to numbered accounts in jurisdictions with strict banking secrecy laws. The total amount redirected this way was approximately $1.2 billion. And who controlled these accounts?" Rebecca hesitated. "We haven't been able to determine that definitively. The account holders are protected by multiple layers of corporate anonymity, but the pattern suggests a single coordinating entity." Chen turned to the jury. "So while the public narrative was that Alina Vance donated Dante Morelli's fortune to charity out of moral conviction, the reality is that she kept over $1 billion for herself." "Objection!" Gerald was on his feet. "Speculation. The witness just said they couldn't identify the account holders." "Sustained," Judge Howard said. "Rephrase, Ms. Chen." Chen smiled. "Let me put it differently. Ms. Torres, is it possible that the same person who orchestrated the theft of Mr. Morelli's fortune also orchestrated a scheme to keep a significant portion of that fortune for themselves?" "Yes. That's consistent with the evidence." "Thank you. No further questions." Dante felt like he'd been punched in the chest. She'd kept the money. After everything, the speeches about justice, the donations to victims, the moral high ground, she'd kept the money. It wasn't about revenge at all. It was about theft. She'd played him, played the FBI, played the entire world, and she was somewhere out there sitting on $1 billion of his money, laughing. Gerald leaned over. "This might actually help us. If we can prove she was motivated by greed rather than justice, We can argue that her evidence is tainted. Shut up, Dante said. But I said shut up. His mind was racing. If she'd kept the money, then she'd made a mistake. Money left trails, patterns, weaknesses. She wasn't untouchable after all. That night, Dante requested a meeting with Sarah Chen. The guards brought him to an interview room. Chen arrived 10 minutes later looking irritated. What do you want, Mr. Morelli? I'm in the middle of securing your conviction. I want to make a deal. She laughed. You have nothing to deal with. I have information about Alina. We already have everything we need on Alina Vance. She's wanted for fraud, theft, identity forgery. If she ever surfaces, we'll arrest her. But that's not your problem anymore. You're not going to find her with warrants and subpoenas, Dante said. She's too smart for that. But I know how she thinks. I know her patterns. I can help you track her down. Chen sat down slowly, studying him. In exchange for what? Reduced sentence, 20 years, possibility of parole. Absolutely not. Then she gets away with $1.2 billion of stolen money, and you get nothing. Chen's expression didn't change, but Dante could see her calculating. Even if I wanted to make that deal, which I don't, I'd need something concrete, not vague promises about knowing how she thinks. Dante leaned forward. She has a pattern. She's compulsive about it. Every identity she creates, she builds it around something real. A real person who died. She steals their history, their background, and layers her own story on top. It's how she became Serafina Vale. It's how she became Elena Rossi. We already know that. But do you know where she gets the identities from? Dante smiled coldly. There's a database. Eastern European. Sells curated identity packages, dead people with clean backgrounds, verifiable histories. I know the people who run it. I can get you access. Chen's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Am I? Because I'm pretty sure your tech team has been spinning their wheels for weeks trying to figure out how she keeps disappearing. I'm offering you the roadmap. She stood up abruptly. I'll consider it, but I'm not promising anything. You've got 48 hours, Dante said. After that, I take this information with me to prison and she disappears forever. Chen left without responding. But Dante didn't have 48 hours. He had 12. The attack came during yard time the next day. 3 men this time, not one. Professional, coordinated. They cornered him near the basketball court, out of the guard's direct line of sight. The leader was a wiry man with a shaved head and dead eyes. He didn't waste time with threats. He just pulled out a shiv and lunged. Dante dodged left, the blade missing his ribs by inches. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard, heard bone crack. The man screamed. The other 2 attacked simultaneously. Dante caught one with an elbow to the throat, sent him choking to the ground. But the third one got behind him, wrapped an arm around his neck, started squeezing. Dante's vision blurred. His lungs screamed for air. He drove his heel down onto the man's instep, heard a satisfying crunch. The grip loosened for just a second. Dante spun, drove his forehead into the man's nose. Blood exploded across both their faces. Alarms blared. Guards swarmed in with riot gear. Bodies hit the concrete. Batons swung. Dante felt something crack in his ribs as a guard tackled him to the ground. They dragged all of them to solitary. But as the door slammed shut on Dante's isolation cell, he knew the truth. Someone had put a price on his head, and they weren't going to stop until he was dead. Chits, 3 days in solitary. No food, no water, just darkness and the sound of his own breathing. On the 4th day, the door opened. Not guards. Victor. He looked worse than Dante had ever seen him, face bruised, one eye swollen shut, arm in a makeshift sling. They'd let them have 10 minutes together, a mercy before the end. Victor sat down on the concrete floor across from Dante, wincing with every movement. They're going to kill you, Victor said without preamble. Russo put out the word. 50,000 to whoever gets it done first. I figured. I can't protect you anymore, Dante. I'm in solitary myself. Administrative segregation for my own safety, they said, which means I'm useless. Dante nodded slowly. I know. So what's the plan? There is no plan. Victor's good eye widened. What are you talking about? You always have a plan. Not this time. Dante's voice was hollow. I played every card, burned every asset, There's nothing left. That's not true. You still have what? What do I still have, Victor? Dante's voice cracked. My empire is gone. My money is gone. The woman I married destroyed me from the inside and is currently living on my fortune while I wait to die in a concrete box. So please, enlighten me. What exactly do I still have? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Me, he said finally. You still have me. Dante looked at him. This man who'd followed him through hell, who'd taken beatings and prison time and federal charges without ever once asking for more than loyalty in return. I'm sorry, Dante whispered. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this life. Same as you. Victor shifted closer, lowered his voice. But I'm not letting you die here, not like this. What choice do we have? There's always a choice. Victor pulled something from his sock, a folded piece of paper, barely bigger than a postage stamp. I got this from one of the guards. Cost me everything I had left, but I got it. Dante unfolded it. A name, an address, a phone number. Who is this? Someone who wants Alina Vance even more than you do. Victor's smile was grim. Turns out she didn't just steal from you. She stole from a lot of people. Important people. People with resources and zero tolerance for being made fools of. Dante's heart started beating faster. Who? Consortium of international investors. The ones who backed some of your weapons deals. When Alina redistributed your money, she included files proving these investors knew they were funding illegal arms sales. Now they're being investigated by 3 different governments. And they want her. Dead or alive. Preferably dead. And they're willing to deal with anyone who can help them find her. Victor leaned closer. Including you. I'm in federal custody. I can't... That's the beautiful part. They don't need you to do anything. They just need information. What you know about her, how she thinks, where she might go. Victor's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They'll pay for it, Dante, not in money, in something better. What? A way out. Dante stared at him. That's impossible. Is it? You think prison breaks don't happen? You think people with enough money and enough motivation can't make anything happen? Victor's good eye gleamed. You give them Alina. They give you freedom. Simple transaction. They'll never pull it off. The security here is, they've done it before, twice. Both times successful. Both times the inmates disappeared completely. New identities, new lives. Untraceable. Dante's mind raced. It was insane. Impossible. Suicidal. But it was also the only option left. What do they want to know, he asked. Everything. Every detail about her you can remember. Habits, preferences, fears. They've got a team that specializes in psychological profiling. They'll use it to predict her next move. And if I do this, if I give them everything, then in 72 hours, you'll be on a cargo ship headed for international waters. From there, you disappear. They'll create a body, stage a prison suicide, close the book on Dante Morelli forever. And you? Victor smiled sadly. I'm not coming, brother. My face is too known. My prints are in too many systems. I'd be a liability. Then I'm not doing it. Yes, you are. Victor's voice was firm. Because one of us needs to survive this. One of us needs to make her pay. And that's you. Dante felt something crack inside his chest. Not his ribs this time. His heart. Victor, don't. Victor stood up slowly, pain etched across his face. Just promise me something. Anything. When you find her, when you finally catch up to her. Victor's voice was cold as death. Make her understand what it cost. Make her feel every second of what she did to us. I will. Good. Victor knocked on the door. The guard opened it. 72 hours, Dante. Don't waste them. He limped out, and the door slammed shut. Dante sat alone in the darkness, the piece of paper clutched in his fist. 72 hours until freedom, or death. Either way, the game had changed. The consortium's representative came the next night, not to the prison. Dante wasn't allowed visitors, but through a series of encrypted messages passed through guards on the take, he conducted an interview that lasted 6 hours. He told them everything. Alina's morning routine, how she always drank green tea, how she ran her fingers through her hair when she was thinking. how she hated loud noises and crowds, her tells, the way her left eye twitched slightly when she lied, how she tilted her head when she was calculating her next move, her fears, heights, hospitals, anything that reminded her of her brother's death, her patterns, how she built every identity around someone who died young, how she always kept emergency cash in 3 separate locations, how she never stayed in one place longer than 6 weeks. He gave them every intimate detail of 6 years of marriage, every vulnerability he'd noticed and ignored, every moment of truth buried under layers of performance. By the time he finished, he felt hollow, scraped clean. The final message came back 12 hours later. Acceptable. Extraction proceeds as planned. Await further instructions. Day 71. Trial Day 9. The prosecution rested its case. Gerald put up a half-hearted defense, a few character witnesses who'd been paid to testify, a technical expert who tried to cast doubt on the biometric evidence and failed. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with a verdict. Dante stood as the foreman read it aloud. Count 1, racketeering, guilty. Count 2, money laundering, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On and on. 23 counts, 23 guilty verdicts. The courtroom erupted in applause. Victims' families cried. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Judge Howard banged her gavel. Order. Order in this court. She turned to Dante, her expression carved from stone. Mr. Morelli, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be scheduled for... The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Alarms blared. Everyone remain calm, Judge Howard ordered. This is a building-wide electrical issue. The explosion came from somewhere below. The entire courthouse shook. Smoke began pouring through the ventilation system. People screamed, ran for the exits. In the chaos, Dante felt hands grab him from behind. Not guards. Someone else. A bag went over his head. He was dragged backward, through a door he didn't know existed, downstairs that shouldn't have been there. He tried to fight, but there were too many of them. The bag came off. He was in a service tunnel beneath the courthouse. 5 men in black tactical gear surrounded him. No insignia, no identification. One of them handed him civilian clothes. Change! Now! We've got 3 minutes before they lock down the tunnels. Dante stripped off his prison clothes, pulled on jeans and a jacket with shaking hands. Follow me. Don't speak. Don't stop. Do exactly what I say, or we leave you here. They moved through the tunnels at a run. Dante's ribs screamed with every breath, but he kept pace. Behind them, the sounds of chaos echoed through the concrete, sirens, shouting, running feet. They emerged in a parking garage 6 blocks away. A black van waited, engine running. They shoved Dante inside. The van took off before the door closed. Inside, someone removed his handcuffs. Someone else gave him water. Drink, a voice said. We've got a 6-hour drive ahead of us. Dante drank, his mind still trying to process what had just happened. They'd done it. The consortium had actually pulled it off. He was free. But as the van merged into traffic and the courthouse disappeared behind them, Dante realized the truth. He wasn't free. He was property now. Owned by people who wanted Alina Vance dead. And they wouldn't let him go until she was. The man sitting across from him in the van pulled out a tablet, brought up a file. We've been tracking her based on your information. She surfaced in Prague 3 days ago. New identity, Sofia Novak, Czech national, works for a tech nonprofit. He turned the tablet around. There she was. Different face. Different hair. But the eyes were the same. We've got eyes on her location. Surveillance team is in position. All we need is your final confirmation that the psychological profile is accurate. Dante stared at the image. After everything, the betrayal, the trial, the prison, the escape, it came down to this. One last choice. Help them kill her and earn his freedom, or refuse and die. His finger hovered over the tablet. And for the first time in his life, Dante Morelli hesitated. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered the question he'd been afraid to ask. What if she wasn't done? What if this was exactly what she wanted? The man across from him smiled coldly. Problem, Mr. Morelli? Dante looked up, met his eyes. and realized with absolute clarity that he'd just traded one prison for another. "No problem," he said quietly. He pressed confirm. The van drove on through the night, and somewhere in Prague, a woman who'd destroyed an empire sat in a cafe, sipping tea, waiting for the final piece to fall into place. Prague looked like a postcard at sunset, spires and bridges painted gold, the Vltava River cutting through the city like a vein of liquid copper. Dante stood on the roof of a building overlooking the old town square, binoculars pressed to his face, watching the cafe 3 blocks away. She was there. Sofia Novak. Brown hair cut short, glasses she didn't need, a cream cardigan over a plain dress. She looked like a non-profit worker grabbing coffee after a long day. But Dante knew better. He'd memorized every movement in the past 4 hours. The way she positioned herself with her back to the wall. The way her eyes tracked every person who entered. The way her right hand stayed close to her purse. She was waiting for something, or someone. "Target confirmed?" The voice came through his earpiece. "Konstantin, the consortium's field commander, Russian accent, former Spetsnaz, dead eyes and a reputation for efficiency." "Confirmed," Dante said. "Good. Team Alpha is moving into position. Team Bravo covering the east exit. You stay on overwatch. If she runs, you call direction." "Understood." "And Morelli, don't get stupid. You're an asset, not an operator. You see something, you report it. You don't move. Clear?" "Clear." The connection went silent. Dante lowered the binoculars, his hands shaking slightly. They'd pumped him full of painkillers after the escape. His ribs were cracked, his face still swollen from the prison yard fight. He should be in a hospital bed. Instead, he was on a rooftop in Prague, hunting the woman who'd destroyed his life. Movement below caught his attention. 2 men entered the cafe, casual clothes, but their shoulders were too stiff, their eyes too alert. Team Alpha. They ordered coffee, sat at separate tables, flanking Alina's position. She didn't react. Didn't even look up from her laptop. Dante's stomach tightened. She knew. She had to know. But she wasn't running. "Alpha in position," Konstantin's voice crackled. "Bravo?" "In position," a second voice confirmed. "Execute on my mark. 3, 2. Alina stood up. She closed her laptop, picked up her purse, and walked toward the restroom at the back of the cafe. "Hold," Konstantin ordered. "She's moving to the back. Bravo, cover the rear exit." "On it." Dante raised the binoculars again, tracking her movement through the cafe's front window. She disappeared into the hallway leading to the restrooms. 30 seconds passed. 60. "Bravo, do you have visual on the rear exit?" Konstantin's voice was tight. "Negative. No movement." "What do you mean negative? She went back there 90 seconds ago." "I'm telling you, no one's come out." Dante's pulse spiked. "She's still inside. Then where the hell is she?" "Alpha, move now. Restroom. Go." The 2 men stood up simultaneously, crossed the cafe in quick strides, pushed through the restroom door. Dante watched through the window as one of them emerged 30 seconds later, speaking urgently into his radio. "She's gone," the man said. "Windows open, leads to an alley." "Bravo, the alley." "Moving, wait, I've got her. Southwest, heading toward Karlova Street." Dante spun, scanning the streets below with the binoculars. There, a flash of cream cardigan disappearing around a corner. "Confirmed," he said. "Southwest on Karlova. She's running. All teams converge, do not lose her." Dante watched as black-clad figures appeared from doorways and alleys, moving with military precision. They were herding her, cutting off escape routes, tightening the noose. But Alina kept moving, weaving through the evening crowds with the ease of someone who'd planned this route 100 times. She turned down a narrow side street, dead end. "We've got her," Konstantin said. "Alpha, Bravo, close in. Morelli, stay put." Dante lowered the binoculars, his breath coming faster. This was it. After everything, the betrayal, the trial, the escape, it ended in a Prague alley. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for 3 seconds before answering. "Hello, Dante." Alina's voice was calm, pleasant, like they were old friends catching up. "Enjoying the view?" His blood turned to ice. "Where are you?" "Right where your friends think I am, trapped in an alley, nowhere to run." She paused. "Except I'm not trapped, and they're not your friends." "What are you talking about? You really think the consortium wanted you for your information about me?" You really think they spent all that money breaking you out of federal custody just so you could point at a photograph? They want you dead. No, Dante. They want you dead. I'm just the bait. The line went dead. Dante spun toward the alley, raising the binoculars. The explosion ripped through the narrow street with a sound like the world ending. Fire bloomed orange and black, consuming the alley. Windows shattered. Car alarms screamed. People ran, covering their heads as debris rained down. Dante stumbled backward, ears ringing. His radio was chaos, screaming, static. Someone shouting commands in Russian. "Down, man, down!" "The hell was that? Get a medic!" Constantine's voice cut through. "Morelli! Morelli! Report!" Dante's hand shook as he pressed the radio. "What just happened?" "She rigged the alley, IED, probably triggered remotely. 3 of my men are down, 2 critical." "Is she gone?" "She was never there. The whole thing was a setup." Dante's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the rooftop, staring at the smoke rising from the street below. She'd known. Every step, every move. She'd known they were coming. "How?" Dante whispered. "That's what I'd like to know." Constantine's voice was cold fury. "Because someone told her. Someone leaked the operation. And the only person outside my team who knew the details was you. I didn't... Save it. Stay where you are. We're coming to get you." The radio went dead. Dante sat frozen, his mind racing. He hadn't told anyone. Hadn't communicated with anyone except the consortium's handlers. Unless... His phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. A video file. He opened it with shaking hands. The screen showed a room he recognized, the service tunnel beneath the courthouse. The moment they'd handed him civilian clothes. The moment they'd removed his handcuffs. But the angle was wrong. It wasn't from the consortium's body cameras. It was from his perspective. The video continued. Showed him changing clothes, getting into the van, the entire 6-hour drive. Every word he'd said, every confirmation he'd given. The file's metadata showed it had been uploaded to a secure server in real time, streaming directly from a device he was carrying. Dante patted his pockets frantically, pulled out the phone they'd given him, the watch, the jacket. In the jacket's inner pocket, sewn into the lining, a tiny transmitter, no bigger than a shirt button. "No," he breathed. Another message appeared. "Did you really think I spent 6 years learning to clone your biometrics and forgot to bug the clothes they'd give you? You're predictable, Dante. You always were." His hands clenched into fists. She'd played him again, used him to draw out the consortium's kill team, then eliminated them in one stroke. But why? Why go through all this? The phone rang. He answered. "You're wondering why," Alina said. "Why not just disappear? Why risk this confrontation?" "Tell me." "Because the consortium wasn't the only group hunting me. There are 6 others, criminal organizations, intelligence agencies, private military contractors. All of them want me dead for what I exposed when I took your empire apart." Her voice was steady, clinical. "So I needed to send a message, and you were the perfect messenger." "What message?" "That anyone who comes after me dies screaming. Your consortium just became an object lesson." Dante's throat was dry. "And me? What happens to me?" "You get to live with what you've done. You get to spend the rest of your life knowing that you helped me kill the only people who might have protected you. Because now?" She laughed softly. "Now you're completely alone. No empire, no money, no allies. Just a fugitive running from both sides of the law." "Alina?" "That's not my name. You never knew my real name, Dante. You never knew anything real about me. And that's what hurts most, isn't it? 6 years of marriage, and you couldn't see the truth standing right in front of you." "I loved you." The words came out before he could stop them. Silence. Then, "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of control. You loved having something beautiful and perfect to display. But you never asked what I wanted, what I needed, what I'd lost." Her voice cracked just slightly. "You killed my brother and forgot about it. Like he was nothing. Like his life meant nothing. I didn't know he was..." "You didn't care. That's the point. You never cared about anything except your empire and your reputation." She took a shaky breath. "So I took both. and I'd do it again. The line went dead. Dante sat alone on the rooftop as sirens wailed in the distance. She was right. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. Footsteps on the stairs behind him. He turned slowly. Constantine emerged onto the roof, gun in hand. His face was covered in soot and blood. 2 more men flanked him, weapons raised. "Stand up," Constantine ordered. Dante stood. "You sold us out." "I didn't. She bugged the clothes. She was listening the whole time. I don't care." Constantine raised his gun. 3 of my men are dead. 5 more in the hospital. This operation is burned, and you're the reason. If you kill me, you lose your only chance of finding her. We don't need you to find her. We've got her pattern now. We'll adapt. But we can't have you walking around as a liability." Dante's mind raced. He had seconds, maybe less. "The necklace," he said quickly. Constantine hesitated. "What?" "The Morelli's son. The diamond necklace. She threw it into the ocean in Lisbon, but that was a decoy. The real one is still out there. It has access codes embedded in the stone, codes to weapons caches, offshore accounts, contacts worth millions. She kept it." "How do you know?" "Because she's too smart to destroy something that valuable. She faked the disposal to throw off anyone tracking it, but it's still in play." Dante took a step forward. "I can help you find it, and when you do, you can use it to draw her out." Constantine studied him for a long moment. "You have 24 hours, he said finally. "Figure out where that necklace is. Give me something I can use. If you can't—" He cocked his gun. "We're done." He turned and left, his men following. Dante stood alone on the rooftop, watching the last light fade from the sky. 24 hours. 1 day to find a necklace that might not even exist anymore. 1 day to save his own life. He pulled out the phone, the one they'd given him, the one Alina had bugged, and stared at it. She was listening. She'd heard everything, which meant she knew he'd told Constantine about the necklace, which meant the phone rang. He answered without speaking. "You just can't help yourself, can you?" Alina's voice was amused. "Always gambling, always trying to play one more hand." "You kept the necklace," Dante said. "Did I?" "You threw a fake into the ocean." "I know you did. The real one is too valuable. It's your insurance policy." "And what if you're wrong? What if I actually destroyed it? Then I'm dead in 24 hours. But I don't think I'm wrong." She was quiet for a moment. "You want to make a deal," she said finally. "That's what this is. You want to trade information for your life." "I want to meet, face to face, no games, no tricks, just the 2 of us." "Why would I agree to that?" "Because you're curious. Because after everything we've been through, you want to see if there's anything left of the man you married, even if that man was a monster." Dante's voice was steady. "And because I have something you need. I have everything I need. Do you? The consortium might be crippled, but there are 6 other groups hunting you. You said so yourself. Sooner or later, one of them will get lucky, unless you have leverage, protection, something that makes you too dangerous to kill." "The necklace. The necklace. You kept it because you knew eventually you'd need it, but you can't use it without exposing yourself. Can't access those weapons caches or offshore accounts without triggering alerts." Dante smiled grimly. "But I can. I know every dead drop, every contact, every access protocol. You need me, Alina, as much as I need you." The silence stretched. "Grand Hotel Prague," she said finally. "Presidential suite, midnight, come alone. If I see anyone else, if I even suspect you've told Constantine, the deal is off and you die." "How do I know you won't kill me the second I walk in?" "You don't. But it's the only chance you've got." The line went dead. Dante stood on the rooftop, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had 7 hours. 7 hours to prepare. 7 hours to figure out how to survive a meeting with the woman who'd destroyed his entire life. Bang. The Grand Hotel Prague sat on the riverfront like a palace, all marble and gold, luxury dripping from every surface. Dante approached on foot, wearing clothes he'd stolen from a tourist's hotel room. No phone, no weapons, no backup, completely exposed. Security cameras tracked his movement through the lobby. He ignored them. If she wanted him dead, he'd be dead regardless of where the cameras could see. He took the elevator to the top floor. The presidential suite was at the end of a long hallway. The door was slightly ajar. Dante pushed it open slowly. The suite was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, furniture that cost more than most people's cars, art on the walls that belonged in museums. Alina stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. She'd changed again. Dark hair now, different face. But when she turned to look at him, the eyes were the same. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought you might try something clever. Bring the consortium. Stage an ambush." She gestured to a chair. "Sit." Dante sat. His ribs were screaming, his vision slightly blurred from the painkillers wearing off. Alina moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed him one. "For old times," she said. He didn't drink it. "Where's the necklace?" "Direct. I appreciate that." She sat across from him, crossed her legs. "It's safe. That's all you need to know." "Safe isn't good enough. Constantine wants proof. He wants the access codes. He wants—" "Constantine is going to die in approximately 45 minutes, Alina interrupted calmly. Dante froze. "What?" "I told you. The consortium was an object lesson. The kill team was just the first wave. Right now, poison is working through Constantine's system. Ricin delivered via a contact toxin in his tactical gloves during the explosion cleanup. He's probably starting to feel symptoms. Nausea, disorientation. By morning, he'll be dead." "You're insane. I'm thorough." She sipped her whiskey. "His death will send a message to the other 5 groups hunting me. And when they inevitably ignore that message and come anyway, I'll be ready." "With what? You can't fight them all." "I don't need to fight them. I need to make myself more valuable alive than dead." She leaned forward. "That's where you come in." "Me?" "The necklace contains access to your emergency network, weapons dealers, black market contacts, favors owed across 6 continents. I can access the codes, but I don't have the relationships. I don't have the trust. But you do." Dante laughed bitterly. "You think anyone in that network would trust me after what you did? After you exposed their operations and drained my accounts? They'll trust you if you deliver what they want. If you can broker deals, move product, facilitate transactions." Her eyes glinted. "If you become useful again." "And you?" "I provide the capital, the 1.2 billion I kept from your accounts. We rebuild your empire together, smaller, smarter, but functional." "Why would you do that? Why help me?" "Because I need cover. The longer I stay exposed, the more likely someone gets lucky. But if I'm your silent partner, if I'm buried in the infrastructure of a legitimate operation, I disappear completely." She set down her glass. "We both get what we want. You get your empire back, I get to vanish, and everyone who wants us dead gets nothing." Dante stared at her, trying to find the lie. But there wasn't one. She was serious. "You're asking me to partner with the woman who destroyed my life. I'm asking you to partner with the only person who understands exactly what you've lost and exactly what it takes to survive." She stood up, walked to the window. "You can say no. Walk out. Try your luck with the consortium, with the FBI, with all the other people who want you dead or in prison. See how long you last. Or you accept that the old Dante Morelli is dead. That man was arrogant, sloppy, and too proud to see the knife coming. But you?" She turned to face him. "You've been humbled, broken down, rebuilt. You're dangerous now in a way you never were before." She crossed back to him, held out her hand. "Partners," she said. Dante looked at her hand for a long moment. Everything in him screamed to refuse, to grab her throat, to make her pay for every second of suffering she'd caused. But beneath the rage, beneath the pain, a cold logic took hold. She was right. He had nothing left except survival, and survival meant making choices he never thought he'd make. He took her hand. Her grip was firm, cold. "Where do we start?" he asked. "With the necklace. You need to see it, verify the codes, make sure everything's intact." She released his hand. "It's in a safety deposit box. Bank in Vienna. We leave in 3 hours." "And Constantine?" "Dead by dawn. His organization will fracture, spend weeks trying to figure out what happened. By the time they regroup, we'll be ghosts." Dante nodded slowly, his mind already working through angles and exits. He didn't trust her, Didn't believe for a second that this partnership would last beyond the moment it stopped being useful to her. But he'd learned something in the past months. Sometimes survival meant dancing with the devil. Sometimes it meant becoming one. Jechipukuk. They left Prague before sunrise, driving a stolen BMW through winding mountain roads toward the Austrian border. Alina drove. Dante sat in the passenger seat, watching the landscape blur past. Neither spoke for the first hour. Finally, Dante broke the silence. Why did you really keep the necklace? I told you. No. The real reason. Alina glanced at him, then back at the road. Because it was the one thing you valued more than money or power. The one piece of your empire that couldn't be replaced. And I wanted to see if you'd be smart enough to figure out I still had it. A test. Everything's a test, Dante. You should know that by now. And if I'd failed, if I'd told Constantine the truth, then you'd be dead and I'd have found another way. She shifted gears smoothly. But you didn't fail. You played it perfectly. Lied just enough to buy time. Kept yourself valuable. I learned from the best. She smiled at that. Maybe you did. The sun broke over the mountains ahead, painting everything gold. They crossed into Austria at a quiet border checkpoint, the guard barely glancing at their forged passports before waving them through. Vienna appeared on the horizon, elegant, pristine, indifferent to the criminals crossing into its borders. Alina parked in an underground garage near the financial district. They walked 2 blocks to a private bank, the kind that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Inside, a banker in an expensive suit greeted them with polite indifference. Account number? He asked in German-accented English. Alina provided a 16-digit code. The banker nodded, led them to a private room, and returned minutes later with a steel box. He set it on the table and left without a word. Alina opened it with a key she wore on a chain around her neck. Inside, nestled in black velvet, the Morelli sun. 40 carats of perfect diamond, surrounded by smaller stones, the whole piece glittering under the room's harsh light. Dante reached for it slowly, his hands shaking. The moment his fingers touched the cool surface, memories flooded back, giving it to Serafina on their anniversary. The way she'd smiled, that carefully practiced smile he'd mistaken for happiness. It had all been a lie, but the necklace was real. He turned it over carefully, examining the setting. There, barely visible under magnification, a microscopic data port embedded in the clasp. It's authentic, he said quietly. Did you doubt me? I doubt everything now. He pulled a small device from his pocket, something he'd stolen from the consortium's van during the escape. A portable data reader. He connected it to the necklace's port. The screen lit up with code, access protocols, encrypted contact lists, account numbers, everything he'd buried over 15 years of building his empire. All of it intact. It's all here, he whispered. Then we're in business. Dante looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time since the hotel. She was different from the woman he'd married. Harder, more focused. The performance was gone, replaced by something raw and real. This was who she actually was, and for the first time he saw her clearly. What happened to your brother? He asked. After I gave the order, what happened? Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. They shot him twice in the chest and once in the head, dumped his body in a landfill outside Newark. By the time I found him, he'd been there 3 days. Her voice was clinical, distant. He was 24 years old, brilliant, kind, everything good in my life. And you erased him because he threatened your profits. Alina, don't. She closed the box sharply. Don't apologize. Don't try to make it right. What's done is done. We're not partners because I forgive you. We're partners because we're both exactly what we need to survive. Nothing more. She picked up the box, tucked it under her arm. We've got work to do. First contact is in Berlin. Arms dealer named Klaus Bergman. He owes you a favor from 2019. We're going to collect. She walked out without waiting for a response. Dante sat alone in his private room, staring at his reflection in the polished table. What have I become? He thought. But he already knew the answer. The same thing she was. A ghost wearing human skin. A weapon aimed at anyone stupid enough to think they were still people. He stood up and followed her out into the daylight. Berlin was rain and neon by the time they arrived. Klaus Bergman operated out of a nightclub in Kreuzberg, all pounding bass and artificial smoke, a front for moving military-grade hardware through Eastern European pipelines. Dante and Alina entered through the back, past security, who recognized Dante's face even after months of absence. Klaus was in his office, counting money with the focus of a jeweler examining diamonds. He looked up when they entered. His expression went from confusion to shock to something like fear. "Morelli," he said in German, "you're supposed to be in prison." "Plans changed," Dante replied in the same language. Klaus's eyes shifted to Alina, then back. "Who's she?" "My partner." "Your wife destroyed you. Everyone knows. My wife taught me valuable lessons about trust and security. Now I'm applying them." Dante sat down uninvited. "You owe me from 2019, the shipment to Serbia. I covered your exposure when customs got curious." "That was 4 years ago." "Debts don't expire, Klaus." Klaus set down the money slowly. "What do you want?" "Access to your supply chain. I have buyers in North Africa and Southeast Asia. High-volume orders, clean money. You move the product, take your percentage, everyone profits. And if I say no?" Alina pulled out her phone, turned it toward Klaus. On the screen, surveillance footage of Klaus meeting with BND agents. German intelligence. The kind of meeting that would get him killed if his suppliers found out. "Then we send this to your contacts in Moscow and Minsk," she said calmly, "and you spend the rest of your very short life explaining why you were talking to federal agents." Klaus's face went pale. "That footage is fake." "Maybe. Maybe not. Does it matter? Your business partners will believe it long enough to put a bullet in your head." Klaus stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he laughed, harsh and bitter. "You've changed, Morelli. Prison did something to you." "Prison taught me clarity," Dante said. "So do we have a deal?" Klaus nodded slowly. "Same terms as before. 15% off the top. Delivery within 6 weeks of payment. No questions about end users." "Agreed." They shook hands. As they left the nightclub, rain hammering down outside, Alina turned to Dante. "That was easier than I expected." "Fear is easier than negotiation," Dante said. "You taught me that." They walked through the rain toward their car, two ghosts in the night, rebuilding an empire from ashes and blood. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like a warning, because neither of them realized the truth yet. The game wasn't over. It hadn't even reached the final round. In a hotel room across the city, a man sat watching surveillance footage of the nightclub entrance. His name was Director James Carver, FBI International Operations, the man who'd been building a case against Dante Morelli for 17 years, the man who'd never stopped hunting. He watched Dante and Alina disappear into the rain, then picked up his phone. "I've got them," he said quietly. "Both of them. Berlin. Send the extraction team." He hung up and smiled. Because, finally, after months of waiting, the two people who'd humiliated the Bureau were standing in a NATO-allied country with active extradition treaties. Finally, they'd made a mistake, and Director Carver never wasted second chances. Beset. The knock on their hotel door came at 3 a.m. Dante woke instantly, adrenaline spiking. Alina was already up, fully dressed, gun in hand. "You expecting someone?" she whispered. "No." They moved to opposite sides of the door. Alina checked the peephole, then went rigid. "What is it?" She didn't answer, just opened the door slowly. Victor stood in the hallway, beaten, bloody, barely standing. He collapsed forward into Dante's arms. "They're coming!" Victor gasped. "The FBI! They know you're here! They're coming now!" Dante felt his world tilt. "How did you—" broke out. 3 days ago. Constantine's people helped me before." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Before she killed them. Been tracking you ever since." Alina raised her gun. "He could be working with them." "He's not," Dante said firmly. He looked into Victor's eyes. "Are you?" "Brother," Victor whispered, "when have I ever betrayed you?" Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "We need to move," Alina said. "Now." They grabbed their essentials, documents, money, the necklace, and ran. Down the back stairs, through the kitchen, out into the alley behind the hotel. Police cars screamed past the front entrance. Tactical vans. Federal agents in body armor pouring into the building. They made it 3 blocks before the helicopter spotlight found them. "Stop! FBI! You're surrounded!" Dante looked up at the chopper, then at the agents emerging from vehicles on all sides. 20 guns, maybe more, all pointed at them. Director Carver stepped forward, megaphone in hand. "Dante Morelli, Alina Vance, this is over. Put down your weapons and surrender." Alina's gun was still raised, her finger on the trigger. "We can fight," she said quietly. "We'll die," Dante replied. "Maybe that's better than going back." Victor, leaning against a wall, coughed again. "Or maybe there's a third option." Both of them turned to look at him. Victor smiled through the blood. "You wanted to know if I betrayed you, Dante?" He pulled something from his jacket. A detonator. "I didn't, but I did make a deal." Dante's stomach dropped. "What did you do?" "I traded information for freedom. Yours, mine, everyone's." He pressed the button. The explosion ripped through the street behind the FBI line. Not lethal, just chaos. Smoke and noise and confusion. "Run!" Victor shouted. They ran, through the smoke, through the screaming agents, through the impossible gap Victor's sacrifice had created. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Dante heard Victor scream. He wanted to turn back, wanted to help, but Alina grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. "He's buying us time," she hissed. "Don't waste it." They burst out of the smoke into a side street, found a motorcycle parked outside a closed cafe, hot-wired it in seconds. Alina drove. Dante held on. They tore through Berlin's streets with sirens chasing them, the helicopter's spotlight sweeping back and forth, agents radioing positions and coordinates. "Where are we going?" Dante shouted over the engine. "Somewhere they can't follow." She took a hard turn into a parking garage, killed the engine, and dragged him into the shadows. The helicopter passed overhead. The sirens faded. They stood in the darkness, breathing hard, adrenaline crashing. "Victor," Dante whispered. "Is he dead or captured? Either way, he's gone." "He saved us." "He did his job." Alina's voice was cold. "Now we do ours. We survive. We disappear. And we make everyone who came after us regret it." Dante looked at her. This woman who'd destroyed him, used him, and now needed him. And he understood with perfect clarity. There was no going back. No redemption, no escape. Only forward, into the darkness, together. "What now?" he asked. Alina pulled out the necklace, the diamonds catching even the garage's dim light. "Now we use this. Every contact, every resource. We build something they can't touch, can't trace, can't destroy. And then? And then we make them all pay." She started walking toward the garage exit. Dante followed. Because what other choice did he have? They disappeared into the Berlin night, 2 ghosts hunting for a place to haunt. And behind them, in a hospital bed under armed guard, Victor smiled through his pain. Because his final play had worked. He'd given Dante one last chance. The question was whether Dante would be smart enough to take it, or whether the woman beside him would destroy him all over again. The city lights blurred past, and somewhere ahead the final confrontation waited. Inevitable, inescapable, absolute. They found refuge in a safe house outside Dresden, a farmhouse that had been abandoned for years, surrounded by empty fields and dead trees. No neighbors, no witnesses, just silence and the constant drizzle of German rain. Dante sat at a wooden table that had seen better decades, staring at the Morelli sun. The diamond caught the weak light from the single bulb overhead, throwing fractured rainbows across the peeling wallpaper. Alina stood by the window watching the road. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Neither had he. "They'll find us eventually," she said without turning around. "I know. Carver's not going to stop. Not after Berlin. Not after we embarrassed him in front of NATO intelligence." "I know that too." She finally looked at him. Her face was gaunt, exhausted. The mask she'd worn for so long was cracking. "Then what's the plan, Dante? Because I'm out of moves." He'd never heard her admit that before. Never heard actual fear in her voice. It made her human. And somehow, that was worse. "We use the necklace," he said quietly. "Access every contact. Cash out every favor. We build a fortress so strong they can't touch us." "That takes time." "We don't have time. Then we make time." He stood up, walked to her. You spent 6 years planning my destruction. 6 years learning every detail of my life, building the perfect trap. We can do the same thing. We just need patience. I had patience because I had nothing to lose. My brother was already dead. I was already broken. Her voice cracked. But now? Now I'm trying to stay alive, and that changes everything. Dante understood that truth better than he wanted to admit. When you had something to lose, you made mistakes. You got desperate. You took risks you shouldn't take. And desperate people died. We need leverage, he said. Something that makes us more valuable alive than dead. Like what? Information. The kind that destroys careers and ends governments. He picked up the necklace. This gives us access to my old network. But your skills give us something better. You can hack systems, extract data, build cases against the people hunting us. We turn predators into prey. Alina was quiet for a long moment, turning the idea over. It could work, she said finally. But we'd need infrastructure, secure servers, anonymous routing, time to compile everything. How long? 3 weeks, maybe 4. We don't have that long. Then we die. She met his eyes. Those are the options, Dante. We run and they catch us. Or we fight and they kill us. Or we disappear completely and build something that makes them afraid to even look for us. He wanted to argue, wanted to find a fourth option that didn't involve weeks of hiding and hoping. But she was right. Survival meant playing the long game, even when every instinct screamed to run. Okay, he said. 3 weeks. We build our fortress, and then we make them all regret coming after us. Alina nodded, something like relief crossing her face. But before she could respond, headlights cut through the darkness outside. They both froze. A car was coming up the access road. Slow. Deliberate. Did you tell anyone about this location? Alina whispered. No one. Then how? The car stopped 50 yards from the house. The engine cut off. Silence. Dante moved to the window, peered through the gap in the curtains. A single figure emerged from the car. Tall. Moving stiffly. Limping. His heart stopped. Victor. That's impossible, Alina said. He was shot, captured. He should be in federal custody or dead. But it was him. Dante would recognize that walk anywhere. The slight favor of his left leg from an old knife wound, the way his shoulders hunched when he was in pain. Victor reached the front door and knocked. 3 times. Pause. 2 times. Their old signal. Dante opened the door. Victor stood in the rain, blood seeping through bandages wrapped around his torso. His face was pale, sweating despite the cold. Hey, brother, he said. Then he collapsed. They dragged him inside, laid him on the floor. Alina grabbed the first aid kit from her bag while Dante cut away Victor's shirt. The wounds were bad. Gunshots. 2 in the chest, 1 in the shoulder. Stitched up hastily, already showing signs of infection. How are you even alive? Dante breathed. Victor coughed, blood on his lips. Kevlar. Caught most of it. Still hurts like hell. How did you find us? Tracker. In your jacket. Sewed it in before Berlin. He smiled weakly. Thought you might need backup eventually. Alina's face went cold. You've been tracking us this whole time? Just Dante. Not you. Victor's eyes shifted to her. I don't trust you. Never have. Never will. The feeling's mutual. Stop, Dante said sharply. He looked at Victor. Who else knows you're here? No one. I ditched the FBI in Berlin, stole a car, drove here. Alone. They'll have your phone, your movements, they'll... I'm not stupid, Dante. I went dark, burned everything. This is it. Last play. Victor's breathing was labored. I came here to tell you something. Something you need to hear before this ends. What? Victor grabbed Dante's wrist with surprising strength. She's using you, same as before. You think this partnership is real? You think she suddenly cares about your survival? I don't think she cares. I know she doesn't. But we need each other. No. Victor's grip tightened. She needs you until she doesn't. And the second you're more liability than asset, she'll put a bullet in your head and disappear. Just like she did to your empire. Just like she did to everyone who ever trusted her. Alina stood up slowly. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? You spent 6 years lying to this man, 6 years building a false life. You think that kind of deception just stops? Victor coughed again, harder. You're a parasite. You attach. You consume. You move on. And you're a loyal dog who followed his master into hell and wonders why he's burning. Alina's voice was ice. Dante destroyed lives. He killed your enemies and called it business. He built an empire on corpses and you helped him do it. So don't lecture me about morality. I'm not lecturing you about morality. I'm lecturing you about survival. Victor's eyes blazed. Dante's ruthless, brutal, but he's loyal. He takes care of his people. You? You'll sacrifice anyone if it serves your purpose. You don't know me. I know women like you. I've seen them destroy better men than Dante, and I won't let you do it again. He pulled a gun from his jacket, pointed it at Alina. Victor, no! Dante moved between them. Get out of the way, brother. I said no. She'll kill you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, when you're no longer useful, she'll end you. I'm saving your life. By murdering her? By eliminating the threat. Dante looked into Victor's eyes and saw something terrifying. Not rage, not hatred, certainty. Victor had already decided, already made peace with this. Put the gun down, Dante said quietly. I can't do that. Yes, you can, because if you shoot her, you'll have to shoot me too, and I know you won't do that. Victor's hand trembled. Don't make me choose. I'm not making you choose. I'm telling you the truth. She's my partner now, for better or worse. And if you can't accept that, then you need to leave. The silence stretched like wire pulled too tight. Finally, Victor lowered the gun. You're making a mistake, he whispered. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. Victor nodded slowly. He stood up, wincing with pain, and walked to the door. He paused on the threshold. When she betrays you, and she will, don't say I didn't warn you. He disappeared into the rain. Dante watched him go, something breaking inside his chest. Alina moved beside him. He's right, you know. Dante turned to look at her. About what? I am using you, same as you're using me. We're not partners because we trust each other. We're partners because we're both trapped. She met his eyes. But he's wrong about one thing. What's that? I won't betray you because it serves my purpose. I'll betray you because eventually that's what people like us do. We survive. And survival means being willing to sacrifice anything, including each other. She walked away, leaving him alone in the doorway. And Dante realized with perfect clarity that she'd just told him the truth, the first real truth she'd ever given him. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. They moved between safe houses, Prague, Munich, Zurich, never staying more than 3 days, always moving. Alina worked 18-hour days building their digital fortress, hacking into intelligence databases, compiling evidence on politicians, generals, corporate executives, creating a dead man switch that would release everything if they were captured or killed. Dante rebuilt his network one contact at a time, called in favors, brokered deals, moved money through channels so complex even he sometimes lost track. They barely spoke except about logistics and strategy. But sometimes, late at night, Dante would wake and find Alina sitting by the window, staring at nothing. Can't sleep? He asked once. I dream about Marcus, she said quietly. About finding his body. About what they did to him. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught? Dante didn't answer. Because he didn't know anymore. The line between genuine remorse and strategic apology had blurred so completely he couldn't find it. Why did you really marry me? He asked instead. I told you, to destroy you. No, I mean, why marriage? You could have infiltrated my organization a dozen other ways. Assistant, business partner. Why commit 6 years to pretending to love me? Alina turned to look at him, and for once, her mask was completely gone. Because I wanted you to feel what Marcus felt. The betrayal, the confusion, the moment when you realized the person you trusted most was a lie. Her voice was soft, devastating. I wanted you to know what it's like to lose everything to someone who never cared at all. And did it work? I don't know. Did it? Dante thought about that night at the Gala. The moment she'd whispered in his ear and disappeared. The feeling of his world unraveling in real time. "Yes," he said. "It worked." She nodded slowly. "Good." She turned back to the window, and Dante understood that no amount of partnership or survival would ever bridge the gap between them. They were bound together by necessity and hatred. And one day, that bond would break. The only question was who would break it first. The call came on day 22. Director Carver's voice crackled through a burner phone Dante had been given by one of his contacts. "Mr. Morelli, I believe we have something to discuss." Dante's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "Your friend Victor gave it to me before he died." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Sepsis from his wounds. He made it 4 days after leaving your safe house. Spent his last hours trying to convince me to give you a deal. Immunity in exchange for Alina Vance." "Victor wouldn't betray you?" "He already did. Told me everything. Your movements, your plans, your partnership with Ms. Vance." Carver's voice was calm, professional. "But here's the thing, Mr. Morelli. I don't need Victor's cooperation. I already know where you are." Dante's hand tightened on the phone. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Look out your window. The building across the street. 3rd floor. 2nd window from the left." Dante moved to the window, keeping to the shadows. "There. Barely visible. A figure with binoculars." "We've been watching you for 18 hours, Carver continued, "waiting for the right moment. But I thought I'd give you a chance to do this the easy way." "There is no easy way." "Sure there is. You give me Alina Vance. You testify against her in federal court, and in exchange we negotiate a reduced sentence. Maybe 20 years instead of life. Maybe even parole eligibility. And if I refuse? Then we storm your location in approximately 90 seconds. You'll be lucky if you survive the arrest. Ms. Vance won't be." Dante looked across the room. Alina sat at her laptop, headphones on, completely focused on her work, unaware. "I need time to think," Dante said. "You have 60 seconds, starting now." The line went silent but didn't disconnect. Dante's mind raced. He could warn Alina. They could run, but they'd never make it. Carver wouldn't have called unless he was certain. Or he could take the deal, trade her for his freedom, exactly what Victor had wanted him to do all along. Alina looked up, saw his face, and immediately knew something was wrong. She pulled off her headphones. "What is it?" "Carver, he's outside. He wants me to give you up." Her expression didn't change. "And are you?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." She stood up slowly. "You've been calculating this moment since Berlin, trying to figure out when it would make sense to cut me loose. And now it does." "That's not—" "It's exactly that, and I don't blame you." She pulled out her own gun, checked the chamber. "I'd do the same thing if our positions were reversed. So what now? We shoot each other? Save Carver the trouble?" "No. Now you make a choice. The same choice I made 6 years ago." She met his eyes. "Do you want revenge? Or do you want to survive?" "I want both." "You can't have both. That's the lesson, Dante. Revenge costs everything. I destroyed your empire, but I also destroyed myself. I'm just as trapped as you are, just as hunted, just as alone." She moved to the window, looked out at the agents taking position. "I'm not going back to prison," she said quietly. "I won't give them that satisfaction, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out that door, draw their fire, give you a chance to escape." "Why would you do that?" "Because Victor was right about one thing. You're loyal, stupidly, dangerously loyal, and maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe I want to know what that feels like, just once, before this ends." "Alina, my name is Sophia. Sophia Vance. That's who I was before Marcus died, before I became a weapon." She smiled sadly. "I thought you should know, in case anyone asks what to put on the grave." She walked toward the door. Dante grabbed her arm. "There's another way." "There isn't." "Yes, there is. We give Carver something better than us. We release everything, every file, every piece of evidence against every corrupt politician and intelligence asset. We burn the whole system down. Make ourselves too dangerous to arrest." "That's insane." "So is dying for nothing." Sophia stared at him. "You'd really do that? Destroy any chance of negotiating your way out?" I'm done negotiating. I'm done playing their game. Dante's voice was hard. They want to hunt us? Fine. But we don't go down quiet. We take everyone with us. Carver's counting down, she said. We've got maybe 30 seconds. Then we'd better move fast. They ran to her laptop. She pulled up the dead man's switch. Terabytes of classified information, criminal evidence, state secrets. You're sure about this? She asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. She hit enter. The files began uploading to every major news outlet, every whistleblower platform, every opposition network across 6 continents. Within seconds, alarms would be going off in government agencies worldwide. Within minutes, the data would be irretrievable. It's done, Sophia said quietly. The door exploded inward. Federal agents poured in, guns raised, screaming commands. Dante and Sophia stood with their hands raised, surrounded. Carver walked in last, his face twisted with rage. What did you do? He demanded. Exactly what you forced me to do, Dante said calmly. You wanted to make an example of us? Congratulations. We just made an example of everyone who ever thought they were untouchable. Carver's phone started ringing, then another agent's, then another. The news was already breaking. Massive intelligence leak, classified documents, evidence of corruption at the highest levels. Carver looked at his phone, then at Dante. You just committed treason. No. I committed honesty. You should try it sometime. Carver stepped forward, gun raised. I could shoot you right now. Claim you resisted arrest. You could, but then you'd have to explain why you didn't prevent the leak, why you let 2 fugitives outsmart the entire FBI. Dante smiled coldly. Your career's over, Director. Same as mine. The only difference is I chose this. You just got caught. For a moment, Dante thought Carver might actually pull the trigger, but another agent touched his shoulder, whispered something urgent. Carver's face went pale. Sir, the agent said loud enough for everyone to hear. Washington's on the line. They want an immediate explanation. Carver lowered his gun slowly. Take them into custody, maximum security, solitary confinement, no visitors, no calls. As the agents cuffed them, Sophia leaned close to Dante. What did we just do? She whispered. Something Marcus would have been proud of, Dante said. We told the truth. They were separated immediately. Dante didn't see Sophia again for 8 months. Shpak. The trial was different this time, because this time the whole world was watching. The data leak had exposed corruption in 17 countries. Hundreds of officials resigned. Dozens were arrested. Intelligence agencies were gutted and rebuilt. Defense contractors went bankrupt overnight. And at the center of it all, Dante Morelli and Sophia Vance. The prosecution tried to paint them as traitors, terrorists, criminals. But the defense argued something simpler. They were whistleblowers who'd exposed crimes committed by the people now trying to prosecute them. The trial lasted 6 months. In the end, the jury acquitted them on the treason charges, but convicted them on the original crimes: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. The judge sentenced Dante to 15 years, Sophia to 12. They were taken to separate federal prisons. No contact, no communication, just time to think about everything they'd lost and everything they'd destroyed. 7 years later. Dante walked out of FCY Hazleton on a gray autumn morning, his prison clothes replaced by civilian slacks and a plain shirt. He'd been released early for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations into his former network. He was 49 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined. He looked like a stranger. A car waited at the gate. Not FBI, not marshals, just a black sedan with tinted windows. He got in. Sophia sat in the driver's seat. She looked different too, older, harder, but her eyes were the same. You got out early, Dante said. Good behavior, testified against some of Constantine's remaining contacts. They knocked off 3 years. She put the car in drive. You? Same. Plus they wanted information on offshore accounts I'd forgotten I had. They drove in silence for a while, leaving the prison behind. Where are you going? Dante asked finally. I bought a small place in Vermont. Cabin in the woods. No neighbors. No past. I'm going to raise chickens and pretend the last decade didn't happen. Sounds peaceful. It sounds boring, but boring is what I need. She glanced at him. What about you? I don't know. I have a little money left, enough to disappear if I want to, but I'm not sure where to disappear to. She pulled over at a rest stop, put the car in park. I'm going to ask you something, she said, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you regret it? Everything we did? The leak, the trial, the years in prison? Dante thought about that for a long time. I regret Marcus, he said finally. I regret every choice that led to his death. I regret not asking more questions, not caring about the consequences. I regret being the kind of man who could order someone killed and forget about it by breakfast. But I don't regret burning it all down. I don't regret forcing the truth into the open, because maybe that's the only good thing I've ever done. Sophia nodded slowly. I spent 6 years destroying you, and then I spent 7 years watching you become someone I might have actually liked, if we'd met under different circumstances. Is that an apology? I don't do apologies, but it's an acknowledgement. You changed. Maybe I did too. She put the car back in drive. I'm going to Vermont, she said. There's room for 2 if you want it. No romance, no partnership, just 2 people trying to figure out how to live with what they've done. Dante looked out the window at the highway stretching ahead. He could say no, could disappear on his own, could spend the rest of his life alone, which was probably what he deserved. Or he could take a chance on something he'd never had before, honesty. Okay, he said. Vermont. They drove north as the sun broke through the clouds. The cabin was small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the 70s, a porch overlooking a lake that froze solid in winter. It was perfect. They fell into a routine. Sophia worked in the garden. Dante chopped firewood and fixed things that broke. They cooked simple meals and ate in silence. They read books and listened to the radio. They didn't talk about the past, not for a long time. But one night, sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Sophia finally broke the silence. Do you think Marcus would forgive me? She asked quietly. For what? For becoming what I became. For spending 6 years lying. For turning myself into the same kind of monster that killed him. Dante was quiet for a moment. I think Marcus would understand that grief makes people do terrible things, and I think he'd be proud that you survived. Even if survival meant sacrificing my soul, you didn't sacrifice your soul, you just buried it for a while, same as I did. He looked at her. But we're both still here, still breathing, still trying. That has to count for something. Sophia smiled sadly. You've gotten philosophical in your old age. Prison does that, gives you too much time to think. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. A year passed, then 2. They never discussed what they were to each other, never defined the relationship. They were just 2 broken people sharing space and trying to heal. Sometimes Dante would wake from nightmares, Victor's face, the prison yard, the moment Alina disappeared at the gala. And Sophia would sit with him until dawn, not saying anything, just being present. Other times she would disappear for hours, walking through the woods alone. And Dante would have dinner waiting when she returned, understanding that some pain needed solitude. They built something neither of them had names for. Something that wasn't quite friendship and wasn't quite forgiveness. But it was real. And after everything they'd done, everything they'd destroyed, real was enough. 5 years after leaving prison, on a cold December morning, Dante received a letter. Federal letterhead. Official seal. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a notice that Victor Cade's remains had been transferred to a civilian cemetery. The FBI was notifying next of kin and known associates. Attached was a photograph of the headstone. Victor Cade, loyal to the end. Dante stared at the photo for a long time. Then he showed it to Sophia. We should visit, she said quietly. Why? Because he died trying to protect you. Because loyalty deserves recognition, even when it's misguided. They drove to Pennsylvania in late winter. The cemetery was small, forgotten. Victor's grave was in the back corner, covered in snow. Dante stood over it, hands in his pockets, breath misting in the cold air. I'm sorry, he said finally. You deserved better than what I gave you, better than the life we lived, better than the end you got. The wind was his only answer. Sophia placed a small stone on the headstone, an old tradition, a sign that someone had visited, that someone remembered. They stood in silence for a while longer. Then they left, because some debts could never be repaid, some losses could never be recovered. All you could do was carry them and keep moving. Teat. 10 years after the fall of Dante Morelli's empire, a young woman walked into a nonprofit office in Boston. She was 26, sharp, determined. She'd built a career investigating financial crimes and exposing corruption. Her name was Elena Rossi, and she'd come to talk about starting a foundation. "What kind of foundation?" the director asked. "One that helps victims of organized crime, people who lost everything to men like Dante Morelli, people who deserve justice even when the system fails them." "That's ambitious." "I know, but I have funding, anonymous donors, enough to make a real difference." The director smiled. "Then let's make it happen." Elena signed the papers with steady hands, and as she walked out into the Boston sunshine, she pulled out her phone and sent a single text to an unlisted number. "It's done." 2,000 miles away, in a cabin in Vermont, Sophia's phone buzzed. She read the message, then showed it to Dante. "Your money?" he asked. "The $1.2 billion I kept. I spent the last decade washing it clean, making it legitimate, and now it's going to do exactly what I always said it would. Help people. Help the people we hurt." She pocketed the phone. Marcus wanted to expose the truth. I destroyed a life trying to avenge him, but maybe this is what he would have actually wanted. Real change. Real justice. Dante nodded slowly. "Elena Rossi. That's a good cover." "She's not a cover, she's real. A former prosecutor who burned out fighting the system. I'm just funding her vision." Sophia smiled slightly. "Turns out stolen money spends the same as honest money, as long as you use it honestly. That's almost poetic." "Don't get sentimental on me, old man. We're still criminals. We're just trying to die with slightly cleaner consciences." Dante laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange, unfamiliar, but good. Dante Morelli died at 63. Heart attack. Quick. Relatively painless. Sophia found him in the woodshed, axe still in his hand, a small smile on his face. Like he'd finally found peace. She buried him in the local cemetery under his real name. No headstone lies. No false biography. Just the truth. Dante Morelli. He tried. At the funeral, only 3 people came. Sophia, the local pastor who'd never asked questions, and a young woman named Elena Rossi who'd flown in from Boston. Elena placed a single white rose on the casket. "Did you know him?" the pastor asked. "Not really," Elena said, "but he knew someone I loved, and he spent his last years trying to make that right. That's enough." After the service, Elena and Sophia stood alone by the grave. "The foundation's growing," Elena said. "We've helped 47 families in the last year, victims of trafficking, extortion, violence, people who had nowhere else to turn." "Good. We couldn't have done it without your funding, without his cooperation in those final testimonies." Elena looked at the headstone. "Do you think he found redemption?" "I don't believe in redemption," Sophia said quietly. "I believe in trying, failing, trying again. Dante spent most of his life being a monster. He spent his last decade trying to be something else. I don't know if that balances the scales, but it's more than most people manage." Elena nodded. "And you? What will you do now? Keep living, keep trying. See if I can make it another decade without destroying anyone." Sophia smiled faintly. "It's a low bar, but it's mine." Elena left shortly after. Sophia stood alone by the grave as snow began to fall. "You were right, you know," she said to the headstone. "Victor was right. I was using you. I was planning to betray you eventually, disappear with the money, and leave you holding the bag." The wind carried her words away. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped. I don't know when. Maybe in Berlin, maybe in Vermont. Maybe the moment you chose to burn everything down instead of selling me out." She knelt, placed her hand on the cold earth. "I never loved you, but I respected you. And in our world, respect was harder to earn than love ever was." She stood up, brushed snow from her coat. "Rest well, Dante. You earned it." She walked back to her car and drove away, leaving behind a grave, a cabin, and a life she'd never expected to survive. 20 years after the fall of Dante Morelli's empire, a documentary aired. It was called Empire of Ashes: The Rise and Fall of Dante Morelli. It interviewed former associates, FBI agents, victims' families. It showed the trial footage, the prison sentences, the aftermath. And at the very end, it showed footage of the foundation. Hundreds of people helped. Thousands of lives changed. Millions of dollars redirected from crime to healing. In the end, the narrator said, Dante Morelli's legacy wasn't the empire he built or the destruction he caused. It was the choice he made at the very end to tell the truth, regardless of the cost. The screen faded to black, and somewhere in Vermont, in a cabin by a frozen lake, an old woman sat watching the credits roll. Sophia Vance was 71 now, gray-haired, quiet. She'd outlived everyone from her old life. Elena Rossi had died 3 years earlier, cancer, sudden and cruel. The foundation continued under new leadership, but Sophia no longer had any official connection to it. She was just a woman in the woods, alone, but not lonely, because she'd learned the difference. That night, she wrote a letter. It was addressed to no one in particular, just thoughts on paper. A record for whoever might care after she was gone. I destroyed a man because he destroyed my brother. I spent 6 years learning every detail of his life so I could burn it to ash. And I succeeded. I took everything from him, but somewhere in that process, I destroyed myself too. Became something I didn't recognize, something Marcus would have been ashamed of. It took prison and time and a man who refused to stay broken to show me that revenge doesn't heal anything. It just spreads the pain around. I don't know if I'm forgiven. I don't know if I deserve to be, but I know I tried to fix what I broke. And maybe that's all anyone can do. Try, fail, try again, and hope that when the final accounting comes, the trying matters more than the failing. She sealed the letter, placed it in a box with other documents, deeds, wills, instructions for after she was gone. Then she put on her coat and walked out onto the frozen lake. The ice creaked under her feet. The stars blazed overhead. The world was silent and vast and indifferent. And for the first time in her life, Sophia felt at peace, not because she'd earned it, but because she'd survived long enough to understand what it meant. She stood on the ice until dawn, watching the sun paint the world gold. Then she walked back to the cabin, made coffee, fed the chickens, lived another day, because that's what survival looked like. Not victory, not redemption, just one more sunrise, one more chance to try. And in the end, that was enough. The end. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you face isn't an enemy with a gun. It's the truth you spent your whole life running from. Dante Morelli learned that too late, but he learned it. And maybe that's the only victory that matters. Not winning, not surviving, but finally understanding what you lost along the way. This was their story. Flawed, brutal, human. May we all be so lucky as to get one last chance to make things right.